Have you ever seen a baby suddenly laugh at absolutely nothing? No sound, no face, no toy, just staring into space and then smiling, giggling like something invisible just happened. And for a second, you pause and think, what are they seeing that I'm not? Most people brush it off. They say it's random or just a reflex or babies being babies. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That laughter might be one of the most revealing behaviors in early brain development, because in baby psychology, reactions are rarely meaningless. What if that moment, that random laugh, is actually your baby's brain processing something deeply complex, something tied to infant behavior, emotional development, and the way the human mind learns to interpret reality for the first time? And once you understand what's really happening, you might never see those moments the same way again. Most people think this is completely random. A baby laughs, and there's nothing there, so the conclusion seems obvious. It doesn't mean anything. Just a reflex, just noise, just randomness. But here's the thing. In infant behavior, almost nothing is truly random, especially not something as specific as laughter. Because laughter isn't just a sound, it's a neurological response tied to perception and emotion. And this is where it gets interesting. For a baby to laugh, their brain has to detect something, a pattern, a surprise, a recognition, a mismatch. That's how laughter works even in adults. It's the brain reacting to something it didn't fully expect. That means something very important. If your baby is laughing, their brain is responding to something real, even if you can't see it. And that's where baby brain development becomes fascinating. So if you've ever looked at your baby laughing at nothing and felt a strange mix of curiosity and confusion, you weren't imagining it. There is something happening there. You're just not seeing it the way they are. Here's something most people don't realize. Your baby is not seeing the world the way you do. Their vision is still developing, their perception is incomplete, and their brain is constantly trying to interpret patterns. In baby brain development, reality is something they're still building. That means what looks like nothing to you might not be nothing at all for them. Shadows, light shifts, tiny movements, even subtle contrasts can feel new, unpredictable, sometimes even surprising. And in infant behavior, surprise is often what triggers reactions. Because laughter, at its core, comes from recognition, not full understanding, but partial recognition. It's that moment where the brain notices something unusual, tries to make sense of it, and reacts emotionally. That's part of how baby reactions are formed early on. So imagine this, a slight change in the light on the wall, a shadow moving as a curtain shifts, or even your face changing expression for a split second. To your baby, that can be a completely new experience, and when their infant brain processes something new like that, it doesn't always respond with confusion or fear. Sometimes it responds with curiosity, and sometimes that curiosity turns into laughter. Not because it's funny, but because it's unexpected. Here's where things become much deeper than they seem at first glance, because your baby is not just reacting to the world, they are actively constructing it inside their brain in real time, using every small piece of information they receive throughout the day. In early brain development, perception is not something fixed or stable. It is something constantly being assembled, tested, and adjusted as new experiences come in. This means your baby is not simply seeing reality, but learning how to interpret it moment by moment without any previous reference to compare it to. And because of that, even the smallest detail can feel significant, unpredictable, or even fascinating in ways that adults can no longer perceive. What feels invisible or meaningless to you can feel completely new and meaningful to them. And this is where baby psychology starts to explain something surprising about laughter, because the brain doesn't need a joke to trigger that reaction. It only needs a moment of unexpected recognition or a break in pattern. When something doesn't match what the brain was predicting, even slightly, it creates a kind of internal signal that demands attention and interpretation. For adults, this often becomes humor because our brain already understands context and patterns deeply enough to recognize the mismatch. But for babies, this process is much rawer, much more immediate, and much less filtered by logic or experience. So their laughter isn't about humor in the way we understand it. It is about discovery. Think about how many times during the day your baby sees something for the very first time, whether it is a face, a shadow, a movement, or even a subtle tone or expression coming from you. Now imagine that same brain trying to organize all of those experiences without having a stable reference of what is normal yet, because everything is still new. This creates a constant loop of prediction and surprise, where the brain is always trying to guess what comes next and then adjust when reality doesn't match. And in many of those moments, especially when the environment is calm and quiet, those small mismatches become more noticeable. That is when reactions like sudden laughter can emerge without any obvious external trigger. So when your baby looks at what seems like an empty space and suddenly smiles or laughs, it doesn't necessarily mean they are reacting to something mystical or imaginary. It often means their brain just encountered something unexpected within its own developing model of reality, something subtle enough that you can't perceive it anymore. And that reaction is part of how the infant brain strengthens connections, refines perception, and learns how to interpret patterns over time. In parenting science, these small moments are not random. They are part of a much larger developmental process happening beneath the surface. Your baby is not just observing the world, they are learning how to build it from scratch. There is another layer to this that most parents don't immediately connect, because not all of those random laughs happen in empty spaces. Sometimes they happen while your baby is looking directly at you. And in those moments, it can feel even more confusing, because nothing obvious changed, nothing dramatic happened, and yet your baby suddenly reacts as if something surprising just occurred. But in baby psychology, your face is one of the most complex and information-rich stimuli your baby experiences every single day. Every micro-expression, every tiny movement of your eyes, your mouth, your tone, all of it becomes data for their developing brain, and that makes you one of the most interesting things they will ever observe. What you perceive as neutral expression is rarely neutral for them, because your baby is constantly scanning your face and trying to predict what comes next, even if they don't consciously understand it. A slight shift in your eyebrows, a small change in your breathing, or even a micro smile that you didn't notice can create a mismatch between what their brain expected and what actually happened. And that mismatch, even when it's subtle, is enough to trigger a reaction in a brain that is still learning how to interpret emotional signals. This is part of infant behavior that often goes unnoticed because adults are no longer sensitive to these tiny variations. But for your baby, these micro changes can feel like entirely new experiences. This is also deeply connected to baby emotional development, because your baby is not just observing you, they are learning how to read emotions, how to respond to them, and how to build their own internal reactions based on what they see in you. So when they suddenly laugh while looking at your face, it can be a response to something they didn't fully predict, something that broke their internal expectation in a harmless way. And in that moment, laughter becomes a form of processing, not entertainment. It's the brain saying, "That was unexpected, but safe." And that combination, surprise plus safety, is one of the strongest triggers for this kind of reaction. So if you've ever had the feeling that your baby was reacting to something about you that you couldn't quite identify, you were probably right. Not because there's something hidden or mysterious happening, but because your baby is detecting layers of information that you no longer perceive. In early brain development, sensitivity is extremely high, and interpretation is still being formed. That's why these reactions can feel so surprising, even slightly unsettling at times. But in reality, they are a sign that your baby is actively learning how to understand human connection. There is a moment in early brain development when something fascinating begins to happen, and most people don't realize how early it starts.
Your baby's brain doesn't just react to what comes from the outside world, it also begins to generate internal activity on its own, even when the environment is quiet. This is part of how the infant brain learns to simulate, predict, and organize information before it fully understands it. That means the brain starts to practice reality internally, even without a clear external trigger. And that can lead to reactions that seem disconnected from what you can see.
This is especially noticeable during calm moments when there is less stimulation coming from the outside, because the brain naturally shifts its focus inward. During these periods, patterns that were experienced earlier in the day can be replayed, reorganized, or combined in new ways. That means your baby might not be reacting to something happening right now, but to something their brain is actively reconstructing. In baby psychology, this is a key part of how learning and memory begin to form, and it happens much earlier than most people imagine. For example, a face your baby saw earlier, a sound they heard, or even a simple emotional interaction can be processed again later, but not in a perfect, structured way like an adult memory. Instead, these elements can appear as fragments, impressions, or partial patterns that the brain is trying to organize. And when something in that internal process feels unexpected or interesting, it can trigger a reaction like a smile or laughter. Not because it's funny in the traditional sense, but because the brain is exploring something new internally. This is part of how baby reactions evolve into more complex emotional responses over time. So when your baby laughs at what seems like nothing, there is a real possibility that their brain is actively generating an experience you simply cannot access. Not something supernatural, not something external, but something internal and developmental. A moment where their brain is connecting pieces of reality in a new way, testing patterns, and building understanding. In parenting science, this is not random behavior. It is the foundation of cognition being formed. Your baby isn't just reacting to the world. They are beginning to create their own version of it. By now, you might be thinking, okay, this is interesting, but what do I actually do when it happens? Because in real life, these moments don't come with explanations. They come when you're tired, distracted, or just trying to get through the day. And that's exactly where most parents miss what's happening, because they treat these reactions as background noise instead of information. But in baby psychology, small reactions are often signals about how the brain is processing the world in that moment. The key is not to control the behavior, but to learn how to read it more clearly. For example, if your baby suddenly laughs while looking at a specific spot, instead of immediately trying to interrupt or redirect, you can pause for a second and observe. Look at what they were focused on. Notice the environment, the lighting, the sounds, and even your own position in that moment. Sometimes you'll start to see patterns, like certain times of day, certain types of stimulation, or even emotional states that repeat. This is part of understanding infant behavior in a more intentional way, rather than reacting automatically. You're not just watching your baby, you're learning how their brain responds to the world. Another useful shift is how you respond emotionally to these moments, because your reaction also becomes part of your baby's experience. If you respond with tension, confusion, or urgency, that can subtly change how the moment is processed. But if you respond with calm curiosity, soft engagement, or even a gentle smile, you reinforce a sense of safety around that experience. This is directly connected to baby emotional development because your presence helps shape how those internal processes are interpreted. In simple terms, you're helping your baby understand that new experiences are safe to explore. And over time, this changes the way you see these behaviors entirely, because what once felt strange or random starts to feel meaningful and even predictable in a different way. You begin to notice that your baby has patterns, preferences, and reactions that are consistent with their development stage. Instead of asking, "What is that?" you start asking,
What is their brain doing right now? And that shift, even though it seems small, completely changes your relationship with these moments, because understanding replaces confusion and curiosity replaces concern. Up to this point, everything we talked about fits within normal baby behavior, especially when it comes to how the infant brain processes new experiences and reacts to unexpected patterns. Moments of sudden laughter, curiosity, or seemingly random reactions are often part of healthy baby brain development and early learning. But there is one important detail that deserves your attention, not from a place of fear, but from a place of awareness. Because sometimes what looks like a typical pattern can begin to feel slightly different over time, and recognizing that difference early can be valuable. For example, if these reactions happen alongside other consistent patterns, such as a lack of eye contact, difficulty engaging with faces, or limited response to familiar voices, it's worth observing more closely. Not jumping to conclusions, not assuming something is wrong, but simply paying attention to how these behaviors evolve over time. In child development basics, patterns matter much more than single events, because development is about consistency, not single events. Every baby grows at their own pace, and variation is completely normal in early stages of life. But awareness allows you to notice when something is consistently different. The first years of life represent a period of extremely high neuroplasticity, where the brain is constantly adapting, reshaping, and responding to the environment in powerful ways. This means that small observations made early can lead to meaningful adjustments later, especially when it comes to supporting healthy development. In parenting science, early attention does not mean early worry, it means early understanding. And understanding gives you the ability to respond in a more intentional and supportive way. It's about being present, not being anxious. Most of the time, what you will discover is actually reassuring, because these moments of laughter and unexpected reactions are signs that your baby is actively engaging with their internal and external world. They are exploring, processing, and building the foundation of how they will understand reality over time. But staying attentive without overthinking or overreacting is one of the most powerful things you can do as a parent. Because when you understand what your baby is doing, you respond with clarity instead of uncertainty, and that creates a completely different experience for both of you. So the next time your baby suddenly laughs at what seems like nothing, instead of brushing it off or feeling confused, pause for a moment and look at it differently. Because what feels random on the surface might actually be a sign of something much deeper happening inside their brain. Your baby is not reacting to nothing. They are reacting to something you simply cannot perceive the same way anymore. And that changes the meaning of that moment completely. It turns confusion into understanding. Your baby is learning how to interpret the world, how to process patterns, and how to build their own sense of reality from the ground up. Every smile, every unexpected reaction, every moment of curiosity is part of that process. And when you start to see these behaviors through the lens of baby psychology and early brain development, everything begins to make more sense. You stop seeing isolated actions and start seeing a system in motion, a brain learning how to exist. Now I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where your baby laughed and you genuinely couldn't explain why? What did it feel like in that moment? Curiosity? Confusion? Maybe even a little surprise? Leave it in the comments, because those moments are more meaningful than they seem, and understanding them might change the way you connect with your baby every day. If this changed how you see your baby's behavior, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Because here, we break down infant behavior and baby brain development in ways most people never stop to question. And if you think this was surprising, you should see what happens when babies stare at nothing for long periods, because that might reveal something even more fundamental about how their mind works. And yes, that connects directly to the video you just watched.